Okay. You're about to hear a story. It's messy, it's complicated, and it doesn't come with a neat little lesson at the end. But it's true. And it's mine. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because sometimes, silence turns into stories too heavy to carry alone. And if you're carrying something like that, then maybe this story isn't just mine. Maybe it's yours too. I used to think loyalty meant staying in a room long after it went cold. That marriage was about endurance, not intimacy. That if you just kept showing up, cooking, cleaning, smiling, it would count for something. But the truth is, love doesn't keep score. It just fades. Ethan and I, we weren't broken. We were fine. Fine is a dangerous place to live. It doesn't scream. It doesn't bleed. It just wears you down one dull morning at a time. He's not a bad man. He's just somewhere else. Always working. Always tired. Always a few steps away, even when he's sitting right next to me. His laptop got more affection than I did. I learned to stop expecting his eyes to meet mine across the dinner table. They never did. Then there was Grace. My best friend since college. Warm. Poised. Always smiling like she knew something no one else did. She had this way of reaching for your hand when you were talking, like you were the only person in the world. She made people feel chosen. Even when she didn't mean to. Her husband, Nathan, quiet type. Didn't talk much. But when he looked at you, it was like he saw through all your layers. Not in a creepy way. In a curious way. Like he noticed things. And remembered them. The four of us had this ritual, Friday night dinners. Their house or ours. Wine. Candles. Polite laughs. We'd talk about shows we weren't watching and plans we weren't making. But underneath it all, there was a silence none of us dared name. Suburbia has this way of pressing in on you. Everything looks perfect from the outside. Trimmed hedges. 2-car garages. Smiling photos on the fridge. But inside, it's a slow burn. Loneliness disguised as routine. Grace and I would sit on the patio after dinner while the men watched the game. She'd pour us more wine and ask how I was doing. Not in that fake, casual way. She really wanted to know. And I think that's when it started. Not the affair. The noticing. The way her eyes lingered when I laughed. The way Nathan always seemed to look up when I walked into the room. The subtle pauses. The space that used to be safe, shifting, changing. And I felt it. Before anything happened. I felt the current moving beneath the calm. I didn't say anything. I didn't stop going to those dinners. Because deep down, I was hungry for something I didn't have a name for. And I think they saw that. They both saw it. And neither of them looked away. It was Grace's idea. The getaway. She said we all needed a break. A change of scenery. For days. One house by the lake. Just the four of us. The place was beautiful. Modern, open plan. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A fireplace that never stopped crackling. The kind of house that made you forget real life waited outside. But something about it also made you feel exposed. Too many glass walls. Too much silence when you stopped talking. First night was light. Wine. Music. Board games we never finished. Everyone laughed too loudly. Said things that sounded rehearsed. I told myself it was just the wine. That maybe we were finally relaxing. But the way Grace poured my drink without asking, the way her fingers brushed mine as she handed me the glass, that felt deliberate. And Nathan. He wasn't talking much. Just watching. Always watching. We played Never Have I Ever. The kind of game you don't play unless you want something to surface. And it did. Grace leaned over the kitchen island, wine glass in hand, and said with this slow, playful smile, "Never have I ever kissed someone else's spouse." My laugh got caught in my throat. Ethan smirked. He thought it was a joke. Nathan didn't smile. He just looked at her, then at me, and sipped his wine. I should have said something, broken the tension. But I didn't, because in that moment, I wasn't sure who the dare was for. That night, Ethan went to bed early. He always did when he drank. Fell asleep in front of the TV like it was routine. Like he was home, not on vacation. He didn't say goodnight. I was standing in the hallway brushing my hair when Grace walked by. She stopped, stood behind me, and looked at me through the mirror. "You okay?" she asked. Her voice soft. Too soft. I nodded. But I didn't feel okay. She reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. That's all. But it lingered. The touch. The way she looked at me like I was glass she didn't want to break. Nathan passed us in the hallway a moment later. He paused, met my eyes, said nothing, just waited, then turned and walked out onto the balcony. I stood there, frozen, heart loud, skin warm. I told myself it was the wine, the house, the quiet, but it wasn't. They weren't clumsy. They were coordinated. And somehow, it didn't feel wrong. Not yet. I started noticing it more after that night. Little things. Small, careful shifts that said more than words ever could. The way Nathan would tilt his head slightly when I spoke, as if my voice was the most interesting sound in the room. The way his eyes didn't just look at me, they searched. Softly, quietly, but deeply, like he was reading pages I hadn't meant to share. And Grace. She stopped calling me bestie. Started calling me love. It was subtle. So subtle it could have meant nothing. But when she said it, it landed somewhere in me I didn't know was hollow. She touched my arm when she laughed. Brushed past me in the kitchen, her hand resting lightly on my back, longer than it needed to. And when I turned to look at her, she wouldn't flinch. She'd smile, like she knew exactly what she was doing. Like she was waiting for me to admit I liked it. And the truth is, I did. But I didn't know what that meant. Not yet. I found myself walking into rooms I didn't need to be in just to see where they were. Lingering on the balcony longer than necessary, hoping Nathan would come outside. He always did, and when he did, he didn't say much. Just stood next to me, close enough to feel the warmth. Far enough to claim it wasn't intentional. But it was. We both knew. And I hated how much I thought about them when I lay in bed at night. Not just one of them. Both. Not in some fantasy kind of way. More like, I wondered what it would feel like to be held by someone who really saw me. To be wanted in a room without having to speak first. To feel chosen, not by accident, but on purpose. That's what haunted me. Not the touches. Not the glances. But the fact that I wanted them. And I tried to justify it. Ethan hasn't kissed me in 6 months. He falls asleep during our conversations. He says I love you like he's reciting a password. Grace touches my hand and I feel seen. Nathan listens and I feel heard. Is that betrayal or just attention I forgot I deserved? I started dreaming about them. It was never explicit. Just soft moments. Grace tucking my hair behind my ear. Nathan brushing my shoulder as he passed. Their faces close. Too close. And every time I woke up, I felt it, that flush of shame crawling across my chest. Because I hadn't done anything. Not really. But in my head, I'd already crossed lines I didn't even know I'd drawn. I wasn't looking to be saved. But maybe I wanted to be noticed. Is that the same thing? I don't know anymore. All I know is something had shifted. In me. Around me. Between us. And once you notice it, you can't unsee it. It started with conversations. Not deep at first, but different. Grace stopped talking about work and weekend plans. She started asking about me. About how I was, not what I was doing. And when I'd give the usual, I'm fine, she'd just stare, like she didn't believe me. Because she didn't. One afternoon, just the two of us folding towels in the guest room, she said, Nathan only comes alive around you. Just like that. No warning. No smile. Just the truth, like it had been waiting to escape her mouth. And I didn't know what to say. Because I'd noticed it too. That same night, Nathan cornered me by the stairs. Grace was in the shower. Ethan was passed out again, drunk and oblivious. Nathan looked tired, but clear. He said, "Grace talks about you like she's in love." And then he walked away. No explanation. No follow-up. Just dropped the weight of it and left me holding the pieces. Something shifted after that. In me. In all of us. I started dressing differently. Not dramatically, but enough to notice. Lighter fabrics. Softer colors. Lower necklines. It wasn't for Ethan. It wasn't even for them. It was for the version of me that had started to feel alive again. The one who missed being looked at. And they did look. Every time. Grace with those long, unreadable glances. Nathan with the kind of gaze that made me feel like I was being unwrapped. Not just physically, emotionally. One evening, it was just the three of us. Ethan had gone into town for something. The excuse didn't matter. What mattered was the silence that followed his departure. It wasn't awkward. It was electric. Grace poured wine. Nathan played some soft jazz on the speaker. We didn't talk much. Didn't need to. The air said everything. I sat between them on the couch. Too close to both. And yet, not close enough. Grace was the first to move. Her fingers grazed mine. Then her hand slid into my lap. Nathan didn't flinch. He just reached over and touched my shoulder, his thumb resting gently at the base of my neck. I remember not breathing. Grace leaned in. Slowly. Gave me enough time to move. But I didn't. And she kissed me. Soft. Tender. Unrushed. And before I could fully register it, Nathan's lips brushed the side of my jaw. And for a split second, I was suspended in something I'd never felt before, seen, wanted, safe, and utterly undone. Then everything paused. Not awkward. Not hesitant. Just waiting. Grace's voice, quiet and certain. Do you want this? Nathan's voice, lower. We already know you do. And I should have stopped it. I could have. But I didn't. And maybe they didn't want me to. That night didn't end with goodbyes. It ended with a beginning none of us admitted. It happened that same night. The tension didn't build anymore, it just broke. Like it had been waiting for the right silence. The right kind of stillness. And we gave it that. There were no declarations. No planning. No words, really. Just breath. And closeness. And this quiet kind of knowing that passed between glances and fingertips like it had always been meant to. I didn't feel like I was being taken. I felt met. Like two people finally stepping into a space we'd both been circling for too long. Grace led. Not with urgency, but with presence. Her touch was gentle. Not demanding. Not hungry. Just sure. She moved like she had all the time in the world. And maybe, for that one night, we did. Nathan stayed close. Not overbearing. Just present. He knew when to move forward and when to simply witness. There was no performance. No game. No roles to play. Just connection. Real and raw. Skin and soul. Intertwined. Not for pleasure. Not even for escape. But for relief. Recognition. A moment where I didn't have to be anyone but exactly who I was. I remember my own hands trembling, not from fear, but from finally being touched in a way that didn't feel conditional, didn't feel like a chore, didn't feel earned. It just was. And when it ended, if you could even call it an ending, there were no tears, no shame, just stillness. We lay there, the three of us, wrapped in warmth and 1,000 unsaid things. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. Later, I slipped away, went to the guest room, shut the door, stared at the ceiling and waited to feel something terrible. But it didn't come. Instead, I cried. Soft, quiet tears. Not from guilt. Not even from confusion. But from being held, truly held, for the first time in what felt like forever. And in the morning, Ethan, like always, was already up. He made coffee, scanned the news on his phone, didn't even notice the shift in me. He looked up from his screen and asked, "Did you sleep well?" I swallowed, paused, then said I dreamt, for the first time in a long time. He didn't ask what about. He never did. They planned it. But I let it happen. And I can't say I regret it. Because for once, I felt wanted. The next morning wasn't dramatic. It was worse than that. It was normal. Too normal. The kind of normal that makes your skin itch. Breakfast was quiet. Grace made eggs. Nathan poured coffee. I smiled too much. They didn't smile at all. We avoided each other's eyes, but our bodies still remembered the night before. The way we sat too straight. The way we didn't touch the way we used to, not even accidentally. Even our laughs sounded like apologies. Ethan, of course, was oblivious. Or so I thought. He kissed my cheek when he left the kitchen. Asked if I wanted to go hiking later. I said maybe, but he looked at me longer than usual. And, for the first time in months, I saw suspicion in his eyes. The kind that doesn't come from something specific, but from instinct. From feeling the shift in the air and not knowing why it feels heavier. A few days later, after we were all back home, Grace sent me a package. No note. Just a photo in a frame, the three of us on the lake dock. Smiling, me in the middle. Her arm around my shoulders. Nathan's hand just barely touching mine. I stared at that picture for hours. Not because of what it showed, but because of what it didn't. It didn't show the nights, the silence, the looks, the ache. It didn't show how my stomach tightened when I saw Nathan's name on my phone screen, and then nothing. Because he never messaged. Not once. But I knew he wanted to, just like I knew he wouldn't. Because some men carry guilt like armor. And some women, we carry it in silence. Ethan started noticing things. He asked more questions. Started touching me again. Random hugs. Kisses on the forehead. Brushed my hair behind my ear, something he hadn't done in years. But it didn't feel real. It felt like someone trying to remember how to be close. Not because they missed you, but because they were afraid someone else already had. I walked through the house like nothing happened. Folded laundry. Answered emails. Laughed when I needed to. But the walls had eyes. And I think Ethan started listening. I kept wondering, was I broken? Or did I just finally break the rules that were never serving me in the first place? I didn't feel like a monster. But I didn't feel innocent either. I felt split. Like I had opened a door I could never close. And on the other side was someone who felt more like me than the woman Ethan kissed goodbye every morning. I've played that night over in my head more times than I can count. Not for the pleasure. Not for the memory. But for the question that won't leave me alone. Did I cheat? Or was I chosen? The world is quick to label. They need neat boxes. Right. Wrong. Faithful. Unfaithful. But where do you place something that felt like truth in the middle of so many lies we'd already been living? I didn't want to destroy anything. I wasn't out looking for fire. But when you've been standing in the cold long enough, even a stolen flame feels like salvation. Was I selfish? Maybe. But I was also starving. And I wonder how many of us are quietly starving in our marriages, calling it commitment, calling it loyalty. I was taught that love stays, even when it withers, even when it grows quiet. But no one tells you what to do when someone else makes you feel alive again. When someone else looks at you like you're still worth reaching for. And that's what it was. Not lust. Not recklessness. It was being reached for. And for the first time in years, I didn't flinch. I've asked myself if I felt whole in that moment, was it still wrong? If their hands helped me remember the parts of myself I buried to keep my marriage peaceful, does that make me a sinner? Or just human? And what even is betrayal? Is it an act? Or a silence? Because if it's silence. Ethan betrayed me long before I ever let Grace or Nathan touch me. We call it monogamy. We call it structure. But I wonder if what we're really doing is agreeing to emptiness because it's safer than asking for more. I stayed loyal to the rules. Until I didn't. And the moment I broke them, I felt something crack open in me.